Two friends who got to know each other and wanted to get married and settle in a country. I remember this country, but I did not take into account that when they got married, they put conditions on them. It was a ritual in this country that both the husband and wife must have their heads shaved bald. However, they refused. It all began on a warm summer evening at a bustling cafe in Paris, where two friends, Mark and Sarah, first met. Their friendship quickly blossomed into a deep connection, and after a few months, Mark decided to propose to Sarah. "Sarah, I know we haven't known each other for long, but I can't imagine my life without you." "Will you marry me?" Mark asked, his eyes filled with hope. Sarah, taken aback but deeply touched, smiled and replied, "Yes, Mark. I want to spend the rest of my life with you." They decided to settle in a small but beautiful country, known for its unique cultural traditions and breathtaking landscapes. They researched extensively and chose a picturesque town called Eldoria. However, they were unaware of one crucial detail about this place. As they arrived in Eldoria and began the process of settling down, they were greeted warmly by the locals. The couple was directed to visit the town's council to complete their marriage registration. Mark and Sarah were excited and hopeful, envisioning a peaceful life ahead. At the council office, an elderly man named Mr. Vangelio greeted them. "Welcome to Eldoria. We are delighted to have you here. Now, as part of our tradition, there is a ritual you both must undergo before your marriage can be officially recognized," he explained. Mark, curious, asked, "What kind of ritual?" Mr. Vangelio continued. "In Eldoria, it is customary for newlyweds to shave their heads bald as a symbol of starting anew and leaving behind their old lives. This tradition signifies unity and equality between the partners." Sarah, taken aback, glanced at Mark before replying, "We weren't aware of this tradition." "Is it mandatory?" "Yes, it is," Mr. Vangelio said firmly. "It is an integral part of our culture. Refusal to comply means you will not be recognized as a married couple here, and there are consequences." Mark interjected, "What kind of consequences are we talking about?" Mr. Vangelio sighed and replied, "If you choose not to follow this tradition, you will face imprisonment until you comply. It's a matter of cultural respect and law." Mark and Sarah exchanged worried glances. They stepped aside to discuss their options. "Mark, I don't know if I can do this. Shaving my head, it's such a big deal." Sarah, who was 28, said, her voice trembling, "Sarah, I understand how you feel. It's a lot to take in. But think about it. It's just hair. It will grow back. What matters is us being together," Mark replied, trying to reassure her. "But Mark, the idea of being forced into something like this, it feels so wrong." Sarah expressed her concern. "I know, love. But consider the alternative. Prison? We don't want to start our life here behind bars." Mark reasoned. Sarah took a deep breath and nodded. "You're right. Let's do it. For us." They returned to Mr. Vangelio and informed him of their decision. "We will comply with the tradition," Mark said resolutely. Mr. Vangelio smiled warmly. "Excellent. The ceremony will take place tomorrow morning at the town square. You will be welcomed as true members of our community." The next morning, Mark and Sarah stood hand in hand in the town square, surrounded by villagers. A local barber approached them with a gentle smile. As the razor buzzed to life, Sarah felt a wave of anxiety wash over her. "I'm scared," Sarah whispered, her grip tightening on his hand. "I'm right here with you, Sarah. We're in this together," Mark whispered back, squeezing her hand reassuringly. One by one, their heads were shaved. When they started cutting the wife's hair, she started crying after they shaved her head bald. "Sarah, it's okay. I'm right here with you," Mark said gently, trying to comfort her. Through her tears, Sarah whispered, I didn't think it would be this hard. I feel so exposed. Mark leaned in and kissed her forehead. We're doing this together, remember? We'll get through it. Just as they were beginning to accept their new appearance, Mr. Vancelio approached them with a solemn expression. There is one more condition we need to discuss, Mr. Vancelio began, his voice carrying a tone of seriousness. As part of our tradition, you must remain bald for 5 years. During this time, you are strictly forbidden from leaving Eldoria. Sarah's eyes widened in disbelief. 5 years? And we can't leave at all? Mr. Vancelio nodded. Yes, it is to ensure your complete integration into our community. Breaking this rule will result in severe consequences. Mark tightened his grip on Sarah's hand. This is unexpected. We need a moment to think. They stepped aside again, the weight of the new condition pressing heavily on their minds. Mark, I can't believe this. 5 years? It feels like a prison sentence. Sarah, 28, said, her voice filled with frustration. Mark took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I know, Sarah, this is a lot to take in. We need to talk to them, explain that we didn't know about these laws. They returned to Mr. Vancelio, desperation evident in their eyes. Please, there must be some way around this. We didn't know about these conditions, Mark pleaded. Sarah added, we're willing to pay. We can offer money if that helps us leave sooner. Mr. Vancelio shook his head firmly. The laws are strict and they are non-negotiable. It is not about money. It is about respecting our traditions and integrating fully into our community. But we didn't know. You can't hold us to a law we weren't aware of, Mark protested, his voice rising in frustration. I understand your situation, but ignorance of the law is not an excuse here. The rules apply to everyone equally, Mr. Vancelio replied, his tone unyielding. Sarah's eyes filled with tears again. Please, isn't there anything we can do? We're not trying to disrespect your culture, we're not ready for this. Mr. Vancelio's expression softened slightly, but his resolve remained. I sympathize with your plight, truly. But these traditions are centuries old and are the backbone of our society. It is a matter of honor and respect. Mark put an arm around Sarah, trying to comfort her. Sarah will find a way to get through this. We faced challenges before. Sarah looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mix of fear and determination. Mark, I don't know how, but we have to make this work. We have to. The couple walked back to their temporary lodging, the weight of the situation heavy on their shoulders. They spent the evening discussing their options, trying to come to terms with the reality they faced. Sarah, I know this is overwhelming, but we need to understand why they do this, Mark said, trying to remain calm and analytical. I just don't get it, Mark. Why is it so important for them to enforce such a strict rule? Sarah asked, her frustration evident. Mark sighed and sat down beside her. When we entered this country, we were forced to shave our heads because the indigenous population has become small. They want to increase this spirit of unity and integration in a professional and strict manner. It's part of their way of preserving their culture and identity. Sarah shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes again. It's just hard to accept, you know. We had no idea what we were getting into. I know, Sarah, but think about it from their perspective. They've probably seen their traditions and way of life threatened. This is their way of ensuring everyone who joins them is fully committed. Mark explained, his voice gentle. Sarah took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. I suppose that makes sense, it's just we didn't sign up for this. True, but now that we're here we have to find a way to adapt. We can't let this break us, Mark said, determination in his voice.